see. Let's start with the record now. Now we're doing the things that don't have anything to do with sexuality. He gets inaugurated on January 20th, 2009. Check? All right, he's in office. First thing he does, walk in office. The bailout, y'all remember that, right? It happened. Trillions of dollars to the banking industries. But here's why that's relevant, because you say, well, why is that relevant to us? Wait a minute. Why was there an economic crash in America? Because these banking institutions did predatory lending loans in black and Hispanic communities. Let me say it again. The economic crash occurred because economic exploitation that occurred from these small hat-owned, white so-called Jew-owned banking industries in black communities. Here's how this part in the beginning is relevant to you. Just on the surface it's relevant. He gives trillions of dollars to banking industry. They have done nothing but exploit the American populace, particularly black and Hispanic community. They didn't do anything. Listen to what I'm saying. They did nothing to get this money. He gives them trillions of dollars. However, since the reason they said they needed trillions of dollars was because primarily black people and Hispanics were losing their homes in the country because of this predatory lending, that didn't make sense. If you was going to give them the $1 trillion anyway, that these communities that had been targeted for this exploitation, that you would take the dollar value that you're giving them and decrease the amount of the mortgages of those people so they don't have to lose their homes. You're giving the banks the money anyway. The banks are getting paid the money that the taxpayers can't pay for their homes. You're giving it to them. Well, shouldn't the people keep their homes? Okay, if you're giving them the money, you're giving the banks the money to cover for the black people that can't pay and are foreclosing on the loans. You're giving them the money anyway. Shouldn't you say, well, dollar for dollar, whatever we give you, that's deducted from how much the people owe you on those homes. Now, if you had a mortgage that was $2,000, $1,000, maybe you could stay in your home. 0% of that. So as a taxpayer, you were exploited as a black Hispanic in this country. You were exploited by these banking institutions, caused a crash in the economy. He pays them for the crash that they created, exploiting and stealing and robbing you. You get no benefit whatsoever. Now, on the surface, that's not that good, is it? It's not that good, but I'll tell you how worse it gets. You really want to talk about how bad it gets. What was he doing at the same time? Do you know in February 2009, the upcoming United Nations Conference on Racism was upcoming? Well, guess what? By April, he made it very clear. We boycotting, the U.S. will not go. Let's see why he didn't want to go to the UN conference on racism. This is a Washington Post article, April 2009. The Obama administration appears to be standing by its decision to boycott the World Conference Against Racism next week in Geneva. The preliminary conference document ran 45 pages and called for reparations for slavery. Stop. The world, the nations around the world have looked at slavery. Many of those nations hate black. I mean, talking about Arabs, Europeans, they hate black people too. But everybody universally looked at what happened to black people in America and said they got to get reparations. You got to do it. Barack Obama gives trillions of dollars to banking institutions that are already billionaires. Small hats who are billionaires are now getting trillions of US dollars. At the same time, he's saying we're not even going to a conference to even discuss giving black people $1 of money for work that we actually did in this country to build it and were never paid for. So there's $0 of our tax dollars that we paid. We paid the taxes, we did the work and never got paid. $0 for us, and he won't even allow the U.S. to go to the conference. First U.S. president to boycott a United Nations conference on racism. The first one to say we ain't even going. We can't get $1, but yet the small hats can get trillions of dollars out the same coffers where there's no money for us. At least, but like the brother said it right. Bush walked, at least he went and said, I'm not with it, I don't agree. This guy says we ain't even going and talk Canada and other countries, European countries, into not going. Let's go on. That ain't it. He steps it up. And that's what we say it's a left and a left. You know, when a boxer, you got the Larry Holmes, he got that left jab where they hit you. Black people in America, Obama got like a little left jab. He gives us like pow. He just keep us right there, right? But when they get to Africa, it's always that right body, though. It's that body shot kind of. It's that head shot. It's that hook. When he come into Africa, he comes strong. Let's see. June 2009, he only not even been there 6 months. President Obama slams African leadership. West colonialism, neo-colonialism cannot be blamed for African catastrophe of the last 20 years. I think part of what's happening, the advancement of Africa, is that for many years we've made excuses about corruption and poor governance. I'm a believer, I'm not a believer in excuses. I'd say I'm probably as knowledgeable about African history as anyone who's occupied my office. And I can give you chapter and verse on why the colonial maps that were drawn helped to spur on conflict. The West cannot be blamed for the disastrous policies that have brought catastrophe to Zimbabwe and other African nations over the past 15 or 20 years. I think it's very important for African leadership to take responsibility and be held accountable. Stop. I'm not even going to get, because for my brothers and sisters on the continent and that are familiar with colonialism and the neo-colonialism and the AFRICOM stuff that's going on, I know y'all doing backflips right now, infuriated. But let's just talk basic facts. The economic collapse in Zimbabwe, by any description, began to occur 1996 when Robert Mugabe said, we will not have the homosexual lesbians at this book fair. And then later they started taking for land reform to give land back to the brothers and sisters who fought for freedom for Zimbabwe. And they were trying to buy the land back from Britain. And Britain said, no, you can't buy it back, even though they already had a written agreement that he could buy it back at market value. That is where his problem started. So the U.S., Britain, and the European nations all boycotting Zimbabwe and putting sanctions on them is, by every account, what has led to Zimbabwe's fall. And Barack Hussein Obama goes before the world and tells, it's not even a dispute, a bold-faced lie to tell black people around the world that everything that the West is doing to black people is black people's fault anyway. He been there a year, so, you know, let's say he just had a rocky road maybe, you know. Sometimes you step in and you don't do things perfect at first. You got to get your feet wet. Now that his feet are wet, he been there a year, a so-called earthquake. Now, when was the last time an earthquake hit some of the islands? What do islands usually have? Hurricanes. They're right on the water. I don't know. Does anybody remember an earthquake in the islands ever? All of a sudden, an earthquake in the islands, and I'm just going to mention this. A year before, I had read an article that they had found in Port-au-Prince oil reserves, by their description in the article, that they said would make Venezuela look laughable. Now, anybody that knows how much oil Venezuela produces would understand what that means. But to the point, let's say we're going to agree. It was an earthquake, okay? It was an earthquake in Haiti, killing our brothers and sisters, leaving them in the rubble, dying. And so we know he's going to stand up right with this one, right? A black nation, the only independent African nation in the Western Hemisphere. First black president who's really a mulatto. But we're going to say black president. He got to do the right thing, right? He's going to appoint Ron Daniels, of course, right? That brother's always working with Haiti. Maybe the brother Randall Robinson from Trans-Africa, somebody who really cares about Haiti, to be in charge of the rebuilding of Haiti, right? Who does he appoint? The butcher of New Orleans. How do you appoint, 2005, they blew up levees and drowned black people, and we watched as they killed and allowed our people to starve and die in New Orleans. Everybody remember that? And he's going to go to Bush, whose family makes their money off of the contracts that they get going into countries after they've been savaged and ravaged and doing the security and the reconstruction of those nations. The vultures and Bill Clinton. So here we go. Maybe that's not that bad. Okay, we'll say, you know, he just don't know who to pick, so he did what all the other presidents did. His record not looking too good to me, but all right, let's say, you know, it's a year and a few months now. Let's see what he's going to do now. Now, he goes to Libya. And it says here, March 30th, Obama authorizes secret help for the Libyan rebels. President Barack Obama has signed a secret order authorizing covert U.S. government support for rebel forces seeking to oust Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, government officials said to Reuters on Wednesday. Now, for brothers and sisters, we're not trying to do a history lesson or political lesson. Let's leave all of that out. I'm not going to say why that was relevant to black people, except I'm going to show you, not tell you. The U.S. and the white world government financed these so-called rebel Arabs to overthrow Libya. Many of our people don't know thousands upon tens of thousands of black people live in Libya. And under Muammar Gaddafi, they had jobs. Many of them were from different African countries. They were there working, living a peaceful life, making it in Libya. Also, when the Arabs came and originally invaded, there's still African communities of the original African inhabitants in Libya that are in Libya. I'm going to show you, this is very graphic and it's very serious. We left out the worst stuff, but to give you an idea of what the Arabs who are paid by Barack Obama administration are doing to the black people that look like me and you in Libya today. And not only did they do it in Libya, right now they've left Libya and they're going into Mali, murdering black people and taking the land and calling it their new country. This Arab group, financed by this nation and other nations, is exterminating black people in North Africa. I can show you better than I can tell you. And they are being financed and supported militarily by who? That's right.
Can you tell us what is the conditions like in this camp?
Recently now, the recent problem now in this camp is we are not safe. Because yesterday night we saw some Libyans, 5 of them. They came with some healers. Then they were moving from tent to tent, bringing out their knives and guns that they want to rape our girls. So the Nigerian and other nationalities here, they had to gather and they drove them away. So now there is nothing like that.
So 9 African men are shoved into a gatehouse, arrested by anti-Gaddafi forces.
These are Gaddafi fighters. Gaddafi fighters.
They're terrified, sweating, praying, some are crying. They're convinced they're going to be shot. They keep whispering to us, stay here with us, stay here, please. Celebratory gunfire increases their terror.
And at the end of this smoke-filled street, an intersection littered with bodies. I count a dozen, a grisly tableau of urban warfare. The victims' hands bound behind them. The rebels say they were executed by Gaddafi's men. But these bodies appear to be black Africans, raising questions about whether the men were executed by the rebels.
Libyan boat carrying up to 600 people trying to flee the violence-torn country has reportedly sunk off the coast of North Africa. It follows an earlier report of 61 migrants from Libya dying from thirst and hunger on another vessel which had been adrift in the Mediterranean for over 2 weeks. Witnesses say NATO deliberately ignored the boat's mayday calls.
After weeks on the run, thousands of black Libyans driven from their homes during the revolt against Muammar Gaddafi find refuge of sorts in a camp in Benghazi. In just 2 weeks, the camp has grown to nearly 3,000 people. Some are still hungry.
These are
I'm praying as I'm spraying automatics, never laying down to the cracker. I'm attacking all Caucasians. Bullets make you drop like salat. All limbs I'm blazing, arm, leg, arm, head. Allah is the greatest. Got no love for the sand cracker, the slave trading rapist. If you think I don't know the truth, you sadly mistaken. 600 AD, The Arab invasion of the African continent. Man in battle stations, start the African jihad. The time to start chasing, yeah, you really gon' need God. AR's arms, aiming, hand to guard, can't reach y'all. Chaos cause changes, freedom fighters could never die. We all God's angels. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with him hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with him hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done. I ain't forget about you. Get him. They insured the ships, they paid for the whips, they funded the expeditions, they paid for the trips, and they talk about genocide, they funded our Holocaust, they screaming out Mazel Tov from